Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to continue looking at cybersecurity, but this time we are going to be taking a perspective of looking at attacks that have already occurred and what damage they have done, and pretty much just offering different cybersecurity prevention techniques that you can use to protect yourself and or your future company or employer. So first, we're going to take a look at some famous cybersecurity breaches. I'm sure there will be some that you've heard of or covered, but I just wanted you to see the magnitude of what a cybersecurity attack can look like and impact that it can have on a company. So first, we're going to talk about the 2013 Target breach. So this was actually where hackers got access to Target's database and pretty much were able to install different malware onto the sales systems of Target. So imagine that the sales systems like that are in each store, it went through like a software update and the malware spread, and that pretty much led to over 40 million credit card information being stolen from Target. So, for many, that was whoever shopped at Target, their information could potentially be leaked, and that caused issues. So, what was the impact for Target? They pretty much ended up having to pay or lost overall almost $20 million in different settlements across pretty much all of the US. So, you see, that was a direct impact as their customers were the ones who were the victims. So, again, cybersecurity doesn't necessarily have to do with you personally protecting your devices, but it also deals with the companies. The companies that you trust with your information and your credit card info are also the ones who need to consider cybersecurity as well. So sometimes you do need to consider who you're doing with business with, and if it's not a big company, then they could be at risk of more cybersecurity attacks. Because in this case, Target is a big company and they were still victims. So imagine what it would look like for a smaller company. Then we have in 2017 Equifax, which is the credit reporting agency. If you all look at your credit scores, they were also hacked because they did not update their software, and basically millions of people, which pretty much everyone has Equifax, their personal info was exposed. And this included their names and their birthdays and their social security numbers, which pretty much, if a criminal got their hands on that information, then they can pretty much become you, and that would be identity theft. So, of course, that caused a big issue and uproar for a lot of people. And the impact of that was a lot of people stopped trusting them, but at the same rate, they couldn't necessarily stop doing business with them because Equifax is a credit reporting service and everyone's credit goes through Equifax, so it's hard to avoid them. But they had to pay over 700 million in settlements across all of these people that were affected and other companies. So that is a big step up from the last breach we saw in Target. And more recently, in 2023, the casino entertainment industry got hit. Two of the industries got hit, or the companies in the industry got hit within weeks of each other. So first, we have the MGM breach, and both of these were located in Vegas. The MGM had a ransomware attack, so pretty much that paused like the hotel operations. People weren't able to register or check into their hotel rooms. Their key cards wouldn't work to let them in the room. The slot machines went down, ATMs went down, everything inside of the property went down and was impacted. So for a lot of customers, they couldn't get in their room or they couldn't check in. And just imagine being on vacation and you can't access your stuff. So that's exactly what happened with MGM. And they pretty much the impact, they lost about 100 million in quarter 3. So that's when within a few months in the year, they lost $100 million. So that's something to keep in mind. But of course, on top of that, the people who were on their properties at that time, I'm sure, will not be staying with them again and do not trust them. So that has also a big impact of customer loss. Similar to that, Caesars Entertainment also had a uh, breach, but this one was a social engineering attack. So someone was pretending to be one of the employees and was able to access uh, one of the IT vendors they use and get access into their system. So that led to the exposure of different customers' data. So that would be anything they entered when they used the casino. So addresses, names, birthdays, etc. And pretty much it was came down to being like a ransomware attack where the attacker said, hey, you had to pay us this amount of money before we give you access to your information again. So that's what they had to do. And reportedly they paid about 15 million to the attackers, but again, on top of that 15 million, they did lose a lot of customers due to trust issues. So, as you see, these are major impacts when a attacker is successful in completing their cybersecurity attack. So, overall, what happened? Basically, all of these companies pretty much experienced one of the following. Either they had weak third party security, which, when I'm saying third party, I mean third party services that they're using. So, this would be, for example, if they have another company handle their payments, then that would be that. Or if they have another company handling their IT, that is what I mean by third party. So that third party company didn't have the security in place to protect their company. Social engineering attacks. So again, someone was pretending to be someone else and was able to receive access because somebody did not verify that that person was who they said they were. Insufficient network segmentation. So, what does that mean? That pretty much means that the company didn't separate their networks. And when you don't separate your networks, if a hacker gets in one network, they get in all the networks. However, if you have your networks segmented, then for example, if they access one of the networks, then they don't necessarily have access to all of the networks. And finally, of course, delayed detection and response. So, in some of these cases, these attacks were occurring over an amount of days before they were even noticed. And that is what led to the amount of data or money that was impacted for these companies. So, seeing those famous cybersecurity breaches, we're going to take a look at cybersecurity in the companies. So, of course, why would it be important? Well, as you saw in the past slides, all of those companies got hit and lost millions of dollars. And not only that, they lost a lot of data, which for the most part is about their customers. So the information we are providing to them as the consumer, and basically they're not doing their part to protect our information that we're providing them for their services. So it's critical to take into consideration cybersecurity because you want to make sure that you're protecting customer data so that they trust you and your reputation stays good. But you also want to make sure you're in compliance with any legal laws and regulations. But in the case that a breach does occur, that could lead to, legal penalties and settlements and having to pay your customers back, which leads to financial loss and also leads to reputation impact. So all of these come into consideration for companies when they're dealing with cybersecurity. So what should they do to protect themselves? First, they should do employee training because, again, in the case with Caesars Entertainment, someone pretended to be an employee and gained access. So, if that's the case, employees need to be trained on how to protect themselves and make sure that they are not a victim of identity theft, which could lead to a bigger problem for the company. So, this would be done using multi factor authentication with all employees to make sure that they have to verify who they are to access the accounts. This will also include doing any software updates, whether it's on company phones or company devices, and encrypting your data. So you want to make sure that, or the company wants to make sure that the data they have stored for you is encrypted, meaning if someone accesses it, they need a key or a password to access your data to even understand what it is. Um, Also, having access management in place. So, who can access what systems, and just making sure that the people who have access to these systems, um, only the people who need to have access, and the people who do not don't. This just reduces risk overall in the company. And lastly, you want to make sure that they have some sort of incident response plan. So that means they know what to do if a cybersecurity attack occurs. So in this case, many companies and many schools and businesses um, should have some sort of incident response plan in place. In case a cybersecurity attack occurs, they know what to do to help prevent the amount of money they lose and ensuring that their customer data is protected. You can also plan to build a cybersecurity program, and this would cover all of these topics on the screen. So basically, with a cybersecurity program, you just need to consider all the risks and the threats that are out there, and then come up with a plan for all of those. So, if malware were to occur in your company, what would you do? If a phishing attack were to occur in your company, what would you do? If an AI threat were to happen, what would you do? And basically, you would also put into plan policies. So, what can or can't your customers or your employees do on the network? What technology should you have or would you be using to protect yourself from these attacks? How or what topics would your employees be trained in? And pretty much having some sort of monitoring system in place to pretty much make sure that everything is good and people are doing as they need to. All of these would cover uh, what you need to create a cybersecurity program that's strong and should be able to protect the company and or your information from cyber attacks or threats. So again, as we mentioned in the last video, cybersecurity is for everyone. It doesn't matter who it is. If you have a technology device, then you need to make sure that you are protecting yourself, your device, and your data. And that would be possible through the use of strong passwords, thinking before you click, making sure that your software is always updated, securing any Wi-Fi that you use, so making sure it's protected, and making sure you back up your data in case there are threats that impact you. So again, one way to protect yourself is through the use of a VPN or a virtual private network. And that basically just creates like a secure tunnel between your device and the internet, and it prevents certain traffic from coming in and out. So basically, what it does is it just routes any internet traffic through a remote server, which is not necessarily connected to you, but that server will then protect your IP address and your location so people can't track who you are and what you're doing on your device, and it will encrypt your data. So overall, it's pretty much kind of making your device invisible in a way so that attackers won't see your device, see what you're doing, and then start tracking you. So if you don't have a VPN in place, you should definitely consider it. I have one on my computer, and it pretty much just allows me to feel safer when I'm connecting to public Wi-Fi. So cybersecurity softwares are out there that you can use to protect yourself from these threats, from any attacks like phishing and identity theft or malware, for example, and they pretty much just protect your device and your data that's within it. So some examples of that would be Bitdefender Total Security, Norton 360, which is what I use, McAfee, or Avast One. Now, all of these are subscription-based cybersecurity software that you can use and you can place on to your laptops, phones, and many of these also come with password managers or secure web browsers, which will automatically scan websites and show you what's good, what's not good, and it will also scan your device to make sure that you don't have any harmful files on your laptop that you are unaware of. So I highly suggest you all getting a subscription to one of these cybersecurity softwares to protect yourself from any threats out there. So there are some things I want you all to consider. In cybersecurity, like I said, if you use a technology device, you are technically a target. And just having an antivirus in place, which is just one of those cybersecurity softwares I just mentioned, is only one layer of protection. So there are multiple things you need to do, like the tactics of hovering over links, making sure you're not clicking on anything you don't know, and being careful what data you input into what websites, which is why it makes sense that you have to always be aware of your surroundings, of the sites you're visiting, of the activities you're doing on your computer, because if you're not, you can open yourself up to a lot of vulnerabilities. So, looking at that and considering that, there is a thing called digital citizenship. Because, yes, you are one that has access to cybersecurity, or you have access to technology devices, which means you too could technically be a cyber attacker. You could use your device to do harm to others, which is what you don't want to do. So, the practice of digital citizenship is promoting the use of responsible technology, um, so that you're not doing the wrong things and you're doing everything right to ensure that you're safe on the internet and so are others. So, the core principles of being a digital citizen is making sure that access is given. So, you want to make sure that, people have access to what they need access to, and you as well. Um, Overall etiquette, so meaning you're not on the internet being a cyberbully and you're using it properly and you're not trying to harm others. Literacy, so you just being aware of the different technology risks out there and making sure that you um, are staying informed on what's going on. Law, which obviously legally there's certain things you can't do on technology devices, and you need to be aware of those laws. Also, we have rights and responsibility. So there are certain rights you should have, which means there are certain rights other people should have. So you are responsible for making sure that you're not violating others' rights and that your rights are not being violated as well. You have health and wellness. So health and wellness means that you are having a healthy balance of use in your technology. So that means you're not on it all day and you're using it in the right ways. And lastly, security. So just making sure that you're protecting yourself and your device at all times. So these are all core principles of being a digital citizen. So how do you practice this? Pretty much, as I mentioned there, this would be thinking before you post. So if you're making posts on social media, try to avoid, hurting anyone's feelings or getting into things like politics and things of that nature, because things will get sticky and you don't want to offend anybody. So that just leads into making sure you're respecting others. You also want to protect your privacy, so you don't want to share too much information on the internet, especially on social media, and balancing your screen time. Technology is a tool, but you don't want it to be used to the point where you're not able to do other things and that you're reliant only on technology. And again, you can help others learn digital habits. So, some of the things I'm covering in this lecture, you can share with your parents, your grandparents, your friends, just making sure that they're protecting themselves and their devices, promoting them to get security software on their laptops, or promoting them to get a password manager to protect their passwords, especially, your grandparents or your parents. As times goes on, they have a lot of passwords and they don't remember. So, just mention to them getting a password manager to help them manage those, and you as well. So, Overall, those are some things you can do to continue to protect yourself and, just spreading the word about cybersecurity techniques and what you can do to protect yourself in the um, technology field. So overall, in this, we covered, some company cybersecurity breaches, common companies that you may have heard of that have been impacted by a cybersecurity attack, some cybersecurity strategies that can be used from a company perspective, which can also be applied to you personally. VPNs, again, if you don't have one, I would suggest you all look into cybersecurity software. Many of those come with VPNs and other protective measures that you can use to stay safe on the internet and prevent you from being a victim of attack. And lastly, just being a digital citizen. So, making sure that you are always using cybersecurity responsibly and that you are only doing what you need to do on technology devices. So, overall, between these two lectures, I've covered, your common threats that are out there, things to look out for, strategies for protecting yourself, and what you can do to be a digital citizen. So, hopefully, you learned something that is very useful, and I hope that you all take some of these cybersecurity strategies that I've mentioned into heart and find a way to implement them just to protect yourself, regardless of the industry that you get into. Everyone, again, is at risk of a cybersecurity threat. So, just always make sure you're doing what you need to do to protect yourself while you're using the internet. So I hope that this was useful to you. I hope that you learned something new. I encourage you all to explore more, learn more about some of these strategies you can use, and even looking into getting a software to protect your device from attack. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to teaching more to you all in the next video.